As we know, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lucky draw happening today, where 14 lucky participants will win exciting prizes. To participate, all you have to do is drop your visiting cards in each of the 14 kiosks in the Expo Center in the adjacent hall. The winners will be announced towards the end of the conference session. And ladies and gentlemen, please note that the winners should be inside the conference hall when their name is announced. We appreciate your enthusiasm and engagement throughout the event, and we hope these prizes add a little fun to your day. Let's see who the lucky winners are. Best of luck to all. Just give us 1-2 minutes till we have the stage ready for the panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for our first panel discussion on the topic, Reimagining Banking Using the Power of AI and Gen AI. It's my privilege to invite on stage the panel of speakers for the session. Mr. Anil Kuril, CGM, Union Bank of India. Mr. Ramesh Lakshmi Narayanan, CIO, HDFC Bank. Mr. Pradeep Srivastava, CTO, Bank of Maharashtra. Mr. Prabhu Kumar, CEO, Vegofin. Mr. Manoj Singodia, Managing Director and Lead, Financial Services, Accenture, India. Mr. Rishi Arora, Managing Partner, IBM Consulting, India, South Asia. And our moderator for this session, Mr. Shwetang Singh, Partner, McKinsey & Company. Over to you, Shwetangji.
So firstly, thank you for coming. Good morning to everybody, and thank you to the IBA for curating such an esteemed panel on perhaps one of the most critical topics. Nobody would argue that AI today is gaining the mind share, and some would say it's the hottest new topic and the buzzword of the day. So our panelists will try their very best to take you through what is creating value versus what is not. Like every disruptive technology, there are optimists who'll say AI will eventually be everywhere. It will power pretty much everything that we see. And then there are some skeptics, like a CEO I met. He said, I see AI everywhere except on the P&L. So there'll be a question on how is it that AI can create value, and that's the Uber theme we will discuss today. And we'll get into 3 sub-themes. First being, where is value being created? So let me kick off this panel with the first question to the panelists in terms of AI has been around for now almost 3 to 5 years. In your experience, where do you see AI is creating value today? And maybe I'll invite Mr. Lakshmi Narayan to go first, followed by Mr. Kuril, and then Mr. Srivastava and Mr. Arora.
I think I'm audible. I think this is the boardroom discussion today, right? Am I audible?
No.
They will start.
Yeah, I think it's
okay. Yeah, now it's audible.
better. Maybe I can just use the mic. This is better, I think, yeah. So I think, Shwetang, great question. And look, AI has been there for very long. Okay, I just want to be clear. In fact, if you look at the theme, it's AI and Gen AI. I think somewhere, if you ask me, the context of the discussion has to focus on both rather than focusing on one area. Okay. From a value creation perspective, AI has proved its value over a period of time in banking industry. You know, whether it is credit, for example, most of the banks, fintechs, everybody uses credit models today. It's a kind of a par for the course. Similarly, risk models, whether it's scenario expansions, whether it's kind of CCARs, and it's been existing for very long. It's nothing new here. Marketing, we all know next best action and all of that stuff. Wherever there's a left side thinking from a probability prediction, AI has done pretty well. Gen AI has come with a very, very different approach. And it is definitely going to make a huge difference. This is not a blockchain kind of I think, with all respects, blockchain has done well, but it isn't the potential and the hype that came along. It's not the same. I think here it will be a shorter cycle of hype. But coming back to the value creation, I think it's very important to know which particular domain a value is going to get created in which geography, because it's going to be very, very kind of a sniper gun kind of an approach here. I'll give an example. For example, I think in India, a lot of the conversations will not happen on productivity. Because if you're going to throw Gen AI on productivity, people are going to resist. That's the reality. Okay. And it's a real threat, right? Suddenly you go and say, I will take out 1,000 people, 10,000 people. It's not going to resonate. Okay. Exactly. But the minute you say no, there are areas, very specifically. So I'll take an example. Sales, for example, definitely risk and fraud management, but two very hot topics in India. So as long as you can kind of look at, which particular area in a particular geography is going to give you value, and that's how you have to go about creating the value, rather than just saying, oh, I will just go after some Gen AI cases, and you will have people coming with all kinds of use cases at you. So the idea is to really narrow down and see the value, and then obviously work through that. We kind of today work, both businesses have to push the value. I don't think it's always going to be a CIO, CTO kind of a decision. So I think these are the two aspects that one has to create. The demand has to come from the users, and the context of that demand has to be very, very localized to my mind, and tailored to that particular geography or that particular institution, so to say. So that's how I think the value discussions will come forth.
Fantastic. And I really love the point which you said, that we've got to be value-led, followed by the technology enabling it, versus the reverse direction. And AI and Gen AI both have to create value together rather than being thought of as standalone technologies. Mr. Kuril, your perspectives on this topic, from your vantage point, where do you see most value being created?
So, am I audible? Yeah. So, thank you, Shwetang, and good morning, everyone. What Ramesh says, I concur with that. And from my point of view, obviously, when you are talking about the value creation, you have to look from the financial value creation and non-financial value creation. While the AI is there for a long period of time, but somewhere or other it was invisible. Although we were talking about the AI, but it was not visible. When the Gen AI came, obviously it all of a sudden become visible now. And then everybody has started talking about, there is a large hype, and we are seeing it today also. Although each one of us talking about the Gen AI, and we are seeing in the consumer space, but we are not seeing in the enterprise space, because enterprise works in a completely different way. And particularly if I talk about the financial sector, there are a lot of regulation around that, and obviously we all have to walk very cautiously in this path. All said and done, obviously, in terms of a value creation, when you look at that value creation, in the non-financial space, AI has created a value, particularly in the risk management aspect of it, fraud prevention, and also to some extent in the credit underwriting, it has helped us. And that has given a value to the organization, but to the extent which you wanted, probably that is not there even today also. Gen AI, obviously, all of a sudden has changed, and we are seeing there is an adoption or green shoot which is coming in the organizations, and particularly there are use cases which are being adopted by various organizations. However, when it comes to the Gen AI and putting a Gen AI in front of a customer is a risky proposition as of now, because we are seeing a lot of issues which are coming up, and when you are putting up half-cooked kind of a dish, then obviously it gives a not only it is risky, but it's also sometimes damaging also. As far as we are concerned, obviously we are also experimenting with this part of it. There are number of use cases which we are working on it, and particularly before coming to this conference, I was talking to my head of a software factory and saying that how you are using it, what is the benefit you got it, because they are using with the Gen AI. And today, although they have started around 3 months back, 4 months back around using this part of it, what they say that we are almost getting a 20% kind of a value creation, which means that the time for code development that come down to a 20%, and that is what the value they talked about. Second aspect is that when we are talking about the Gen AI or AI per se, what we are looking, there is a trend which is a more inward looking, although everybody talks about that Gen AI can replace the contact center. Customer can go directly to the Gen AI chatbot and take the help or services which is needed for it. But according to us, it's a risky proposition, and that's why we talk about saying that there has to be man in the middle or person in the middle before you give it to the customer. And that's why the use case comes that you provide a help to your agent so that he can respond to the customer. And similarly, if you look at the inward side also, when you have large help desk in any of the financial organization, because you have large branches, large set of employees, and they have various kind of a help required for them, and that's why you set up a help desk in your organization, whether it's IT help desk or HR help desk, because those are the requirement.
Yeah.
The Gen AI use case is a very prominent in those areas, and we are also working on that, so that the time to respond to the query gets substantially reduced.
Yeah.
Your accuracy to the responses improves substantially, because then you have a large amount of data available with you, and also the solution which are available. So you need not to reinvent those solutions again and again, because as an agent, I have a very limited visibility. But when it comes to the Gen AI, obviously your visibility increases, you get to the accurate solutions, and then you are able to serve those internal customer or external customer. So that is how we are looking at it, and I think going ahead, this value will create amplify in that way.
Makes sense.
So, thank you.
Lovely. And I think what you've said is that enterprise use cases will not be same as consumer use cases. You need man in the middle to make sure that value is created responsibly. Mr. Srivastav, now that you've heard two veteran bankers talk about it, what's been your experience? And after that, I'll invite Mr. Aurora to take a horizontal lens to this.
Sure. Am I audible? Yeah. Okay. So good morning to all of you. AI and Gen AI, my view is something like that. AI is we are using not only today, from past so many decades, and that is already there. In Bank of Maharashtra also, we implemented many AI and robotics process automation kind of the stuff, and we established that processes. A lot of government straight-through processes which we have automated through that one, and they are also the AI enabled. But I do have industry experience as well, and I have worked across the different global industries as well. So what I've seen that this AI is actually the part of each and every phase. So if you talk about the customer acquisition, I'm talking about more from the banking industry. If we have a customer acquisition, then we have the different things, like we do have the customer onboarding, we do have a KYC checking, we do have customer screening, we do have the payment screening, we do have the customer transaction monitoring, and also the fraud is a major part, which my colleague Mr. Kuril has also discussed. And the last one is if there is any recovery and all of the stuff, then we have to look into that. So I just give you one example. When I was working in one of the global bank, and they are having around 50 plus countries, they are having their offices and presence in the 50 plus countries. You can think about in terms of the financial loopholes are there, frauds were there, then all these things were coming. And we established a global center where actually we were remediating all this kind of the stuff. And there was a lot of manpower which has deployed. And they were doing the screening of the customer, screening of the payments, and as well as the transaction monitoring, fraud related stuff, everything they were doing. Surprisingly, when we were doing this thing, we identified there are around 90 to 95% false positive alerts are being generated. And these alerts, being at the global bank in the different banking industry, regulator requirement is different. Most of the regulator require this false positive alert, you need to show them, so that what due diligence you have done, they wanted to look into that. There was a huge manpower who was working in behind. We implemented the machine learning and the AI based systems over there. We trained the model and deployed over there. And finally, you would be surprised that this 94% or 94% false positive that was there, they started reducing very drastically, and result was very much promising. And although there was a fear once we implement the AI, and the AI is a catalyst, the people are thinking it is going to replace the manpower. No, it is not going to replace. It is going to augmenting the AI practices over there. It is not a replacement kind of the stuff. So these were the things which not only the global, even in our bank also, we started implementing this kind of the stuff, and phenomenal results were there. This GNI, like my colleague Mr. Ramesh has already talked about that one. That is also one of the booming thing, and that is something we also started looking into from our operational resilience point of view. So we do have a monitoring center, and we established that one, but how we can monitor more periodic basis, and it should be a more fruitful result, and it should be proactive, not other than a reactive kind of this time. So the proactive approach, implementing the Gen AI, that can be also give a lot many value addition things over there. So that is all from my side.
Yeah, I think the common theme that I'm taking away is that as bankers, you are optimistic on the value that this can create, but you've got to look carefully and put the right guardrails in place to extract this value in a regulated enterprise. Mr. Arora, you have a orthogonal lens to this. Where are you seeing most value, and what's left on the table that some of the bankers are not picking up right now?
So let me start by saying we are very proud as IBM. The heritage which we have in financial services, we work with about 90% of 200 global financial institutes, and we have conducted POCs slash programs on Gen AI across many institutes. So what use cases I'm going to talk about is basis the output or the results which we have seen being delivered to these financial institutes. First, if I talk about why Gen AI in banking, the focus is banking, right? See, banking is a very cost-intensive, people-intensive industry, right? You see the cost of ops, you see the automation which is possible on the process side, on the banking ops side. You see the regulatory and compliance, the demand is ever increasing, and basically, the TAT required to respond to these demands is always going down, right? So if I look at use cases specifically for banking, I see use cases around customer engagement and customer support, right? Responses through virtual assist, right? And I will give you a couple of examples where IBM has implemented such solutions globally. So customer engagement, customer support is one. Use cases most important around, risk and compliance. How do you respond to the regulators? How do you ensure that you are always compliant, right? More importantly, when I talk about risk and compliance, imagine the fraud scenario, which is kind of ever increasing in our industry, right? So how do you do fraud simulations, and how do you prevent fraudsters from basically taking the monies away, right? So fraud simulations is a very important use case. Obviously, there is a huge use case around technology, right? Around software development, right? So there is a huge use case around technology. Yes, we have also seen use cases across HR. We have seen use cases again around F&A, finance and accounts. But more so, I believe if I come, closer to home, the banking industry in India is at we are just starting to implement Gen AI programs, right? We are at very initial stages of implementing Gen AI program, right? And it is all about implementing these programs not at a department or a function level. See, we are all talking of the returns which Gen AI will give. I think the real return will come in if you implement it across an enterprise.
Yep.
And if you have to then implement it across an enterprise, how do you basically trust the results of that? Yeah. So I would just want to conclude by quoting a couple of real use cases, right? One is, we work with this British bank, early adoption. This bank, adopted basically the customer engagement models, and I quote basically the outcomes which have been delivered, 99.9% efficiency coming in from the work which the analysts were kind of doing, right? It was taking 12 weeks, now it takes about 4 minutes, and this is this is all real data, right? I will again quote, so this model was around the customer engagement part. Another use case which I will quote is around, again, a global bank, basically, European bank. But this use case is around IT, right, around software development. The increase in developer efficiency was 30%, and all these are, kind of proven results. So, is Gen AI going to give real outcomes? Yes, it is going to give real outcomes. It is only about adoption at scale.
Thank you, Mr. Arora. And actually, that sets up the next theme very well, where now that I think you've heard from everybody that yes, there is value to be seen, different players see different value at different stages. I'm very curious to hear from the panel on what are your learnings as you've scaled this, because it's one thing to do a proof of concept, but for real value to come, you've got to scale this across the enterprise. So on the second theme, I'd probably invite Mr. Kumar first and then Mr. Singodia. As practitioners where you interact with multiple players in the industry, what are your learnings, either on what has worked or on what has not worked, so that the audience over here walks away with some takeaways for their organization? Mr. Kumar.
So Gen AI is, am I audible?
Yeah.
So Gen AI is just going to embrace what we are going to embrace in the near future. So Gen AI and AI is here to stay, no doubt. Now coming to the implementation and coming to the acceptance is something we need to work upon. So it has its own set of challenges, the way any other technology had, whether it was IoT, cloud computing, or anything. So we have just begun the journey. Now, what Shwetang asked, like how we are going to see the challenges, or what kind of a challenges we are going to see in implementation is, yes, we do have a progressive regulator, but it's our responsibility as both practitioners and providers to have efficient systems which is transparent, secure, because here we are talking about financial data. Sensitivity has to be at the paramount. So what we feel at WeGoFin is we are trying to add as much as layers of security, sensibility, keeping things transparent, training the algorithms to the best possible way, without biases, keeping the models running and recurringly, getting all the feedbacks, which makes this model to, scale up more. And here I would like to take the cue from Kuril sir, what he was mentioning about enterprise model, because not all the models what we are seeing today, which is available in the market, might be, at the enterprise level. Because here we are talking about a bank, irrespective of its book size, we are talking about financial data. So the state-of-art technology is very essential, pertinent, and that's the way to go. But when it comes to adoption, yes, it's gonna take time. But by the time we are in 2025, all the banks have, AI has inroads almost in all the banks. Every banks are implementing AI to the best possible extent, whether it's at a governance side, whether at a business side. Holistically, yes, there is a long way to go. We are here to embark the journey. I think we are in the best of the times to take it. Yeah, Manish.
Your biggest lesson or challenge?
Yes. So I think our takeaways, I would say, having now spent a couple of years, especially after the advent of Gen AI, I think is the approach. And we firmly believe, I think it has to be a reinvention approach. You have to reimagine the business. As the title says, right? I think that's where the focus has to be, and that is what will allow you to realize the full potential of Gen AI, right? So if you look at, and all the use cases you heard, it practically comes across entire banking value chain, right? So there's no part of of banking which is not going to be touched or impacted by this technology. So I think it's only fair that you start thinking about optimizing the earnings, redesign your processes, but keeping GenAI at the heart of it, because that's when you really unlock value.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think if that's the approach, I would say, what we have seen work best is you set up an enterprise-grade GenAI platform first. Yeah, I think everybody initially obviously spending time on doing their own experimentations, their own POCs. That's just to get familiar with the technology, what challenges it come with. But once you've got comfortable with it, I think that's the area to go. Build a GenAI platform which serves the entire organization. And then I think once that's set up, that really allows you to then just focus on what are the scaled use cases you can deploy and realize the value. So I would say that is where the value is. And from a banking industry perspective, I think if you look at it, 3 broad dimensions. Productivity, if you look at just productivity, you can unleash up to 30% productivity. From a top line perspective, if you look at it, it can add another 6% to your top line. And from a bottom line, ROE perspective, that can be about 300 basis points. But all of this, only if you start thinking of it from a business reinvention perspective. But if you continue to do what you do in silos, I don't think you'll fully realize the potential of this technology. So I think that's what I would say. Change the approach, look at it holistically, look at it enterprise-wide, and reimagine the business.
I love that.
I just wanted to come in if I
Yes,
can.
please.
I think just to kind of take that point a little bit more, because I do think there is also this whole problem of data. All of us are thinking GenAI, but the data is garbage. What are you going to get out of it? Okay.
Well said.
And a lot of enterprises are not ready. I have seen many EDW's projects failing. Today, I can tell you, not very few banks are ready from saying my data is in such a curated way that I can get actual decisions from it. So the way I see this is get the data right, like you said, then you go after the classical AI to be refined on top of it. Then you get to the GenAI, and then you actually get into the agentic AI that everybody is talking about. And each one has to draw out the path. I think it's very important that, first of all, you get the data right. Otherwise, everything, every investment, it will be a pilot, actually. So just wanted to kind of, add to that, because while the think process is holistic, but get the data right. Without that, the entire process transformation is not going to happen,
I agree. And I think it's an and. The reimagined approach with the right enablers and data, you can't ignore any one of them. Mr. Kura, final words on this topic, on challenges or learnings that you've had?
So I think in terms of challenges are, I think there are many challenges which we all talk about. Data, obviously, Ramesh has talked about that. Data quality is a paramount important, because you are drawing a decision based on the data. If it is a garbage in, then garbage out, obviously those kind of a thing. Second aspect, when it comes to the GenAI, particularly when we are all talking about, and we are all aware of there is a hallucination problem, there are biases problem, and until unless we take care of those aspects of it, probably any program which roll out tomorrow will run into the trouble. And particularly when we are talking about the financial industry, and when regulator is so supportive, even then also we'll face issues if you are not taking care of those part of it. So as a part of implementation, if you are not taking care of those aspects, then obviously we are going to run into those kind of a problem. One more important aspect of, as far as the challenges are concerned, is a skill set. Now that is the one area where we are all finding it very difficult to scale up. Because one is a new technology, second, the kind of a skill set which are needed for you is not at all available, which means that you have to retrain the people, and when you are retraining the people, obviously at what level they will come up is a question to be asked. That is another problem. Third problem is that when we are talking about the GenAI, we are talking about the value creation. Now value creation will come when we are able to serve the customer. Now with the half-cooked your GenAI program, obviously you will not be able to go there. And those are the aspects which you have to take care from the beginning itself, whether you are doing a POC or you are doing a small scale rollout. If you are not taking care of this aspect, then obviously your program is bound to fail. As far as the opportunities are concerned, obviously, although you talked about the challenges, but opportunities are enormous, because what we are seeing that this is one technology which will touch everybody, whether it's employee, whether it's a customer, and your time to market, TAT, and all those aspects is going to be impacted very hugely if you are doing a right kind of a program, and there the value creation will come into the picture. And so I think, but today each one of us are talking about the problem, challenges which this program is having. Although there are solutions, but they will require a lot of efforts as far as the technology leaders are concerned, because ultimately we have to start right from the beginning itself. That is what it is. Yeah.
Thank you. I think what I'm taking away is that when you think about scaling this, you have to be clear-eyed about not just the approach, but the data, the talent, the change management aspect of it. Thinking about this as a plug-and-play technology is not going to work, and it's most likely going to be bound for failure, right? So that's one of the biggest takeaway that I take when you all have talked about this, and this is more a transformation theme rather than just take an off-the-shelf technology and use it. We have about 7 minutes left. A critical topic that we've not discussed is how do you use AI and Gen AI responsibly in the enterprise? While there's a lot of potential, there are also extreme risks, and people have heard the horror stories of what AI can do. So, Mr. Singodaya, maybe I get you to first respond, followed by Mr. Arora, on what are you seeing as practices that organizations can take to make sure that AI scales responsibility, and then I'll come to a few of the bankers.
Sure. Look, I think, there is no doubt there is a lot of skepticism around Gen AI and adoption, and therefore I think responsible AI sits at the heart of this concept of Gen AI, right? And it is going to be critical in terms of how it sort of gets adopted and expanded, right? So I think it is going to be. So therefore, you have to think about it more strategically. Again, embed it into value chain, and it cannot be an afterthought, right? So I talked about setting up the enterprise platform. It is at that point itself you start thinking about responsible AI and what it needs to tackle. Broadly, about 5 areas from a risk perspective, right? Sir, Kulil has talked about biases and discrimination. That's a very obvious one. I think the second bit is regulations, and it's not just regulations from a business perspective. Your government's now talking about coming out with their own AI guidelines. The regulator is going to look at it differently. You have DPDP rules and all. So look at that and holistically again say how this is going to be compliant to all of that. Third, I think hallucinations and inaccuracies, I think there are ways to sort of tackle that, but again, it needs to be addressed. Otherwise, obviously, you cannot put out anything out unless you are comfortable with it, right? So I think that's the third area. Fourth, I think data has been touched upon, and it's absolutely right. I think data is the base, but also you have to be careful because this is going to be trained on data, and therefore sensitivity around what kind of data are you exposing it to. Is there any PII data going out? But also be cognizant of the fact that let it not become a source of leakage, because a lot of organization data is going to be used to train this. So I think that's the fourth area. And then finally, I think sustainability. Again, I mean, while it's a great technology, also be mindful of the impact on environment, and especially from an energy consumption perspective. So I think those are the risks you need to worry about, but I think each organization will have to think about what is the approach, in terms of what guidelines and principles they want to set in terms of adoption, and then thoroughly monitor it. And then one or two other things which you need to do on an ongoing basis is, as you start pumping in more and more use cases, think about what are those unique risks which come with each use case and then tackle it. Because you can't just think about it once and forget about it, right? So you have to be cognizant of what, if you're introducing something new, think about what other risks which you've not thought about in the past it sort of brings. And then finally, I think testing is going to be where it's going to give the comfort and confidence to everybody who's going to use the technology. So look at it from holistically, again, is it fully proved from an accuracy perspective, from fairness perspective, from explainability perspective. So I think that's what is going to do us a lot of good, and it needs to be thought upfront. Otherwise, we will not really realize the potential of Gen AI.
Thank you for framing that, Mr. Arora.
We all spoke about we all spoke about adoption of AI, right? So if AI has to be adopted across an enterprise, it has to be adopted responsibly, right? Responsible AI is equal to responsible business is what I would say. My friend Ramesh spoke about data, and all my fellow panelists spoke about data. So let me start by data. So when you focus of responsible AI, infuse focus on AI data stewardship, right? How do you trust the data? How do you trust the source of data? So infuse focus on AI data stewardship. Infuse focus on data privacy, and this has to be not at a model level, but it has to be at a AI framework level, right? So that is one. Number two is you need to, the model outputs which you are getting, all of them need to be explainable, right? They cannot be ambiguous, right? Because these models, end of the day, you are actually taking decisions basis these outputs, right? Number three is, when you are training these models, you have to ensure that these models are trained and you don't have, they are trained for fairness. They are trained for absolute transparency. They are trained for, basically avoiding any hallucinations per se, right? So all this becomes extremely critical in scaling AI responsibly in an organization.
Thank you. Mr. Srivastav, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I do agree with my fellow colleague, whatever they said. I will talk around probably three dimensions. One is the data. Data is definitely an issue, and as industry practice, we should be always taking the taking the data from the golden source of repository. That is the thumb rule of that one. And the truth source of data we should be importing. But it's by philosophy it is one of the good aspect, but in the real world it's really very difficult, because over a period of time we develop the systems, we started taking the data from there. So it's really a very big problem, and believe me, this is not only for the India, it is all global. It's a big problem, because data is not a truth data which everybody is facing, everybody is having the problem for that one. Numerous solution has come into the market, numerous process we have adopted, but still this is a challenge. So data is definitely one challenge, because AI is taking all the historical data. The more and more data, the more and more prudent result will be there. So that is one area where we are struggling. Second thing, I personally feel the change of mindset. People are adamant to change these things. They are thinking whatever they are developing, they are producing, their output is good enough. Rather than if we say and we tell them, ki, hey, we need to implement AI, Gen AI, then you have more prudent result, more output, more sophisticated output will be there. So there will be always challenge. So change the mindset of the people, and on top of that, those who are working in this particular business over decade and decade, that is always a very difficult. But somehow people started thinking about that when they started adopting the solution as well, once they see the result, and their mindset started changing. And the third thing, I think so, the scalability, because once we train the model, this model is only for a limited period of time. We always do more efforts and investment on training the model. And then as and when the use cases come, regulation comes, new businesses dimension comes, we have to train the model. And this is a cost is there. Second thing, the time is also there to train the model. And then once you train the model, probably the another things comes. I'm sorry, time's up.
No, thank you for that. So maybe, Mr. Kumar, final word in the last 1 minute to actually wrap up this, and then we can conclude. And thank you for the patience from the audience. But Mr. Kumar.
Sure, thank you. So we are talking about privacy, secrecy. The paramount thing what we need to look upon is, like, the data at rest, data in transit also meets that, the spectrum of sanctity. And we should also look about not just practicing the AI responsibly, also, proactively thinking how we can, create better models in the future. All these models should be future-proof, and most importantly, it's our, in our own interest as practitioners, we should ensure these models keep on evolving, because the model is going to evolve. Nevertheless, let's look for a global change. So compared to any other countries, in India, what we see is the adoption is quick, faster. It's catching up quick. So let us look forward to take this as much as inroads and make a greater inclusivity among all the banks.
All right, thank you. Thank you to the panelists. I think I am walking away with a sense of optimism that yes, there's a lot of value to be created, but everybody needs to keep their feet on the ground and think about this as a really practical challenge that needs to be overcome in a very structured and holistic manner. This will not be an example of some of the past technologies where you drop it and it's going to magically create value. So thank you for sharing these thoughts. I know we are a bit over time, so thank you also to the audience. I'm sorry we couldn't do Q&A, but the panelists will be available in case you have any questions for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the effective deliberations around the topic of AI and Gen AI. We really enjoyed the discussion. Yeah, please wait for a photograph, group photograph. Thank you, panelists, again, and thank you, Shwetangji. Thank you.